Ladies and gents, I'm Brandon the Dom, and today I'm giving you a practical guide for Tantra. Now first, some of you may be familiar with Tantra, some of you may not, or just curious about it, not quite sure what it is. So let's first give a little bit of background about what Tantra is. Because if you Google around for Tantra or you start watching YouTube videos, you're going to get a ton of different explanations. I'm going to try and give you a practical one that you get a good grasp of it and why it might be beneficial for you. The first thing we have to do is separate Tantra from Neo Tantra. So most of the stuff that you see about Tantra nowadays is actually Neo Tantra, which is basically new Tantra, more modern version. And a lot of the Neo Tantra stuff is sexual, which we're going to cover some of that today. But it originally derived from Tantra, which is a spiritual tradition that is a culmination of different religions from different tribes in Southeast Asia. And the spiritual tradition Tantra actually serves as a precursor to Hinduism and to Buddhism, which are often emphasizing reaching some sort of enlightenment by going through rituals. As time went on and the modern world got a hold of Tantra, it became Neo Tantra, which still focuses a lot on spiritual and personal growth, but using sexuality as a way to reach that growth, to actually do that. Now, I'm going to read out this description that I wrote as part of the article because it's a lot easier to read it and get everything in it than it is for me to remember and say it well. So, and the way I'm going to say each of these is probably pronounced wrong, but please bear with me. So the most prominent form of Tantra was non-dual Saiva Tantra. And in this tradition, Tantra is the direct experience of the sacred reality represented by Siva and Sakti. Now, Siva is pure consciousness that underlies everything, and Sakti is the living energy that manifests the whole universe. With this worldview also comes spiritual practices, such as contemplation on the worldview itself, or basically philosophy, meditation, yoga exercises on the body, and a sharpening of the senses. The goal of these practices is to realize the divinity in all things, including self-realization, in order to attain worldly and spiritual liberation. So that was the goal of the spiritual tradition of Tantra. How does that exactly lead to sex? Well, there's some key philosophies underlying that description that I just gave you that point to sexuality as being a practice or a tool to reach that enlightened stage. So the first underlying philosophy is everything can be a spiritual practice. Washing the dishes, taking the dog for a walk, checking your mail, and having sex could all be ways that you could experience divinity in life. And all you need to do is bring your present awareness to how that divinity is experienced. The second principle or philosophy underlying Tantra is the role of the physical body. There's a lot of old yogic traditions that think of the body as something that should be separated from the consciousness, something that's impure, too worldly, and needs to be left behind. Tantra's view, however, is that the body can be used as an instrument to actually experience divinity. And the more we are in tune with our own body and aware of the senses, the more that we can actually experience that divinity. Now, sex happens to be one of those acts where all of your senses are really, really heightened. And if you're able to still maintain awareness in that heightened state, you're going to be very acute and could experience divinity. And then the last underlying and one of the most important philosophies is having Siva and Sakti at the center. Basically, Siva and Sakti are two sides of the same coin. One's the masculine, one's the feminine. And it's within the union of those two that life is experienced, because those two are actually one. It's kind of confusing, but if you can understand them as one coin and they're two sides, then you can understand how they're one experience of life, but they're two beings. Now, according to Tantra, it's important that you experience both sides. You experience femininity and masculinity and bring those into union to actually experience the absolute. So sex could be interpreted as the union of those two sides. And you can see this philosophy influencing certain positions like the yab yum, where the masculine is grounded and the feminine sits in their lap. So that's how we go from this spiritual tradition where everything is a spiritual practice, the body is used as an instrument, and you're trying to bring both sides of the coin together to actually feel union, can lead towards sex, because sex is a practice of doing all of that. The last thing before I get into some of the basic tantric practices that you can use, I want to address energy. That's often something that you hear come up a lot with tantra, energy flowing through the body. There's energetic orgasms. So you might be like, what is energy? I think with a lot of older traditions, they had certain beliefs and practices that signaled to a real biological or neurological thing happening, but they didn't have a way to describe it. And I think energy is one of those things. For example, there's the practice of Qigong, where you're often doing slow movements, and that's helping to move energy throughout the body. One of the things that you do in Qigong is focus on your breath, and you often are breathing very deeply, bringing a lot of oxygen into your body. And as you're bringing that oxygen in, you're getting more and more oxygen into your blood cells. And as you do these movements, you're moving that blood around, you're improving blood flow. So you're improving where all of that oxygen is going. And it's going to make you feel really good. It's going to help heal some of the parts of your body and going to make you feel more energized. So in that sense, you literally are moving around the energy of life. Now there's 3 basic pillars that we're going to cover in just a moment of Tantra, and that's eye contact, touch, and breath. And each one of these things, eye contact, touch, and breath, can be used and combined together to experience some of this energy movement. And you experience this all the time. So think about when you are having eye contact with somebody. Like you can look at me right now on the screen and hold eye contact. Keep holding it. You looked away, didn't you? Just kidding. When you have eye contact with somebody like that for a long time, you kind of get that antsy feeling, like your body warms up a little more. That may be out of fear, out of excitement, out of attraction, maybe all of them at the same time. And your body gets a little bit of a buzz, right? That could be considered energy. You could also think about when you're touching somebody and you're getting like very, very close. You can kind of feel the warmth of their skin. You run across and it just kind of feels electrifying. You get sometimes if you're, cuddling or hugging somebody, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. That can also be experienced as energy. And if you have ever done things like Wim Hof breath or Tumo breath, the more you do that, the more oxygen you get flowing in. And I promise you're going to feel something that feels like energy. So if you start combining all of those together, you're going to have a very much energetic experience. And as you're doing these things, especially in connection with a partner, you often feel like you're getting in sync with each other, right? Because you're both feeling the same sensations in your body. You have a body, they have a body, you guys are doing the same things. You both kind of feel this energy. And if there's a level of attraction between you, you feel that chemistry as well. So this is when you start to begin to feel like you're in touch with them or you're in touch with the environment around you. You feel like you're one with everything. Now, whether you believe that on a spiritual level or not, that's up to you. The point is when you do these exercises, especially around eye contact, touch, and breath, you're going to feel something like energy. You're going to feel more connected to your partner, and it's going to be a very pleasant experience. Something that's going to deepen the emotional connection you're having with your partner. It's going to enhance the pleasure and sensitivity of your body. It's going to make everything feel awesome. It's going to make your orgasms feel stronger just because of how aware and in tune you are with everything going on. And the more that you experience this, the more you may feel it on a spiritual level and having unity with everything around you. That's the benefit of bringing Tantra into your sex life, into your sexual practices. On one end, you get more deep emotional connection and greater sexual pleasure. And on the other, you may feel some divinity or union with everyone around you. So whatever your goals with this are, let's talk about how you can actually reach that. Now, there's a lot of different resources you can learn Tantra from, and they're going to take you through different things. Some are going to focus specifically on the techniques. Others are going to interweave a lot of that spirituality that I just mentioned. But I'm going to break it down for you so it's super easy to get started and really easy to understand. As I mentioned before, there's three basic pillars to Tantra. That's eye contact, that's touch, and that's breath. So let's talk about each one and how you use it. The first is eye contact. This is pretty simple to understand. The longer you are staring into your partner's eyes, the more connected you are going to feel to them. So a simple practice that's done in Tantra is called eye gazing. And it's exactly how it sounds. You can sit down in front of your partner, often crisscross applesauce, legs crossed in front of them, and just gaze into the other person's eye. It's often easier to look at one eye, so you can look at the person's left eye and just hold eye contact with them. And oftentimes this is going to feel a little weird, may even feel a little silly. You may have emotions come up. You let all of that come up. You laugh when it's silly. You cry when you need to cry. Whatever comes up, you just do that. A lot of times in Tantra, people will basically kind of set a time limit for this. So they might eye gaze for 5 or 10 minutes. And oftentimes, the longer you go, the more of those things that come up. So whatever comes up, you can be okay with that. Now, you can actually use this as foreplay before sex, or you can use it as part of intercourse. So before sex, it's actually a great way to kind of separate the busy world that you were in into being intimate with your partner. Both of you take a moment to stop, kind of create this barrier and this bubble for you two, and you engage in that practice of eye gazing that I just mentioned. However, you could be doing this during intercourse. You could basically stop movement or stop what you're doing and just gaze into each other's eyes. Now, obviously, I like to practice dominance and submission. You actually can weave in a little bit of dominance into this as well by stopping all motion, starting to gaze into each other's eyes, and then telling your partner that they can't look away. Or you can ramp it up a little more and lightly choke them as you're doing it. But pretty simple practice, but has a lot of benefits in creating connection between you two. The second one is touch. One of the purposes of Neo Tantra, which we're talking about now, where it's focused specifically on sex, is to bring awareness to your body, specifically to the sensations that your body is having. And by doing so, you often slow things down and you prolong the pleasure and often increase it because of how much awareness you're giving to the sensations happening in your body. There's lots of different ways to think about touch, but the easiest one is to think about your hands and where they're going. Your hands are going to be the greatest tool of exploration of another person's body that you have. Basically, you want to take your hands and map every zone on your partner's body, every inch, finding out what is pleasurable for them in those areas. Now, in Tantra, there's often different touches that you can do in order to map those areas, and they're associated with the different elements. So you have water, fire, air, earth, and ether. So a quick example of each of those. Water is often a fluid motion across the body. You're just rubbing your fingers and your hands across your body. That's water. And you can think about it because, you kind of move around like water would. Fire is more about scratching or hitting or rubbing intensely on the skin. And it's going to create some friction, some heat, associating it with fire. Air is when you're running your hands so close to their body that they can barely feel the air that's going through it, but you're not actually touching the skin. Or you're very, very, very lightly touching it, like just touching the hairs on their skin. In order to do this well, you often have to go pretty slow to actually keep your hands and your fingers above them. But this is going to bring a lot of awareness to that area that you're doing this to, because your partner is often eager and their body is begging for them to actually touch them. But they're enjoying it so much that they don't want you to touch them. Now, earth, you can think about the earth as something that's very grounded that you hold on to. And earth is about compressing and holding on as you're touching, grabbing on and compressing as you move around. And then the last one is ether. This is moving into some of that energy work. So you can think about as you're breathing and you're bringing that breath in, down your chest, into your stomach, you can help your partner move that by, moving your hand up in the same motion that energy would be moving. And you can also help to move that energy throughout the body. That would be an ether touch. Best way to learn these different touches is just to kind of experiment and try them out. But you can also take massage courses and learn different touches around that. The key with any of this, though, is you go really, really slow. Like if you think you're going slow, go even slower, because it's in you going slow that the person has to slow down their mind and concentrate more on where that touch is happening on their body. Again, oftentimes, especially when we're having sex, we want to go, we want to get to the finish line, right? So we get very eager. We want the person to move quicker. So there's a little bit of frustration, but we actually get to enjoy that touch the more that we slow it down. Now, the fun thing to do is actually start combining some of these touches. So if we go back to a little bit of BDSM play, you could be spanking somebody, which is going to create a lot of heat. And then you could blow across where you just spanked or lightly run your hands across that. And it's going to create two different sensations and bring a lot of awareness to that area. All right. The third pillar is breath. Now, your arousal levels are pretty significantly linked to how you're breathing. And there's lots of different breathing techniques out there, but you basically just need to learn two different types. One to raise your arousal level and one to lower your arousal level. And by doing this, you can control how aroused you are. And if you're not feeling very aroused, you can bring your arousal level up. If you're feeling too aroused and you think you're going to orgasm and you're not ready to orgasm yet, you can lower that arousal level. So let's talk about both. So to raise your arousal level, I want you to think about when you're having sex or the next time that you have sex, pay attention to how you're breathing. Oftentimes, you're going to realize that the breath is very shallow and very rapid. It kind of feels like you're running a marathon, which you're doing a lot of exercise, but it's also pushing your body to ejaculate or pushing your body to orgasm. It's often something like this. And if you do that right now, like if you just take a moment to pause the video and kind of breathe that quickly, you'll realize that you're generating a lot of heat, like you're giving your body a lot of excitement. So, in order to give your body some more energy, some more arousal, especially if you come in and you've had a terrible day, you're just not feeling very high energy, and then your partner wants to have sex, have some intimacy, but you're just not quite at that level yet, you can use a breath that is sort of similar to the same style of breath that you're having when you're having sex to raise your arousal level. This is often called fire breathing or Tuma breath. It's basically what the Wim Hof breath style is. And it's those short, rapid breaths. And it's better to do this through your nose. So something like this. And you can actually do with that with your partner. And if you're sitting both in the yab yum position, then it's kind of simulating like you're actually having sex or intercourse with that person. So it can actually be quite a fun thing to do as foreplay. Now let's talk about the inverse of that, which is lowering your arousal level. And this should be very intriguing to all of you, but specifically the guys watching, because this is what's going to help you last longer. If you can bring down your arousal level from the 10, oh my God, I'm going to ejaculate now, down to a 7 or a 6, and kind of stay in that, ride a wave, somewhere between a 6, bringing it up to an 8 or a 9, kind of riding that, it's going to be very, very pleasurable for you, and you're going to last a lot longer. And honestly, there's not crazy technique to do this. It's just about getting control of your breath and paying attention to it and breathing a lot deeper into your stomach and slowing down your breath. If we know that we're breathing really short and shallow, our body is pushing us to ejaculate. If we do the opposite of that, we can bring ourselves down from that arousal level. It's just taking a deep breath in all the way to the stomach. And what I actually want you to do is to push that air to the bottom of your stomach and push it into your pelvic floor. So the pelvic floor is right at the bottom of where your groin area is. And this is what is actually controlling your orgasm. So when you have an orgasm, this pelvic floor contracts a lot. And this is often what helps to push out the ejaculate. So what's happening as you're having more and more sex is basically this pelvic floor is tightening and tightening and tightening and contracting a lot. So if you can breathe deep into that pelvic floor, it's going to relax it and release some of that tension. So what you want to do is breathe in to your stomach all the way down and kind of push it down into the bottom of your groin. Push on that pelvic floor. And that will help to lower your arousal level. The other thing is when you're gaining awareness of your breath, it'll also help you to move all that arousal throughout your body. So sometimes when you're having sex and if you're not really paying attention, it just feels like everything's concentrated in your genitals. All the fun and excitement is concentrated in my dick and it's ready to explode, right? When you're concentrated on your breath and helping to push it down into that pelvic floor, you can kind of feel all that arousal, all of that energy, if you will, to other parts of your body. Okay, now I'm breathing in, I'm kind of pushing it to my legs, throughout my legs, pushing it in my stomach, in my chest, and you kind of move it around. So the concentration is not completely on what's going on in your genitals. And this is going to bring more senses online for the rest of your body. So, I mean, even if right now you ran touch across your hand, that's kind of pleasurable if you sit there and think about it. Like that touch feels really nice. So if you can feel that sensation all across your body, then everything is going to feel really good. This is when people start having the whole body orgasms. Basically, they're so aware of all of the sensations happening everywhere in their body, and it feels really, really good. Using your breath, getting awareness of that can help you to gain that sensation and turn all of those online for you. So those are the 3 pillars of Tantra. And you can start using those in combination with one another to start doing some of the tantric practices. I listed out a bunch of these practices in the article that I wrote on my website, Brandon the Dom. There's some for eye gazing. So I linked out to some different videos about eye gazing, about how to do the yab yum position. Put some in for touch. So there's something called the 3-minute game. And it's basically where you spend 3 minutes fulfilling your partner and how they want to be touched. And then you spend another 3 minutes asking for touch from your partner. And then you switch roles. And this is not only going to help you learn how your partner likes to be touched, but it's also going to give you practice about giving and receiving. Basically asking for something you want and helping to fulfill your partner's needs. So this is a great practice for communication as well, but it can be really fun and you can do it completely non-sexual. Just stay with the hands and arms as you're doing the touch game, or you can do it all over the body. I also linked to a video about the elemental touches that I just went over. You can see just some demonstrations of that. And then some other things in touch that is pretty popular in Tantra is to do genital or body worship. So seeing that other person's body is one of the most amazing incarnations of the divine as you can. And then there's a specific kind of worship and massage that's called a yoni massage and a lingam massage. The yoni has to do with the pussy and then the lingam has to do with the dick. And there's ways to do specific massages around those where it's not focused so much on orgasm, but specifically just on the pleasure of that area and one partner giving as much pleasure as possible to that area. I linked to some courses below in the Vegucated app, which is a fantastic place to take some of these sex courses. And they have specific courses around those types of massages. It's not YouTube videos for that because they're not going to show you naked people on YouTube. And then I linked to some for breath. So there's a breath meditation that you can do with your partner. There's something called heart-to-heart breathing. It's basically putting your hands on the other person's chest and feeling that breath as you do it. I put a couple of resources for fire breathing and then those extended exhales to lower your arousal. And then something called the microcosmic orbit, which is basically helping to move that energy throughout your body and going through that breath, starting from the top, going down to the bottom where your pelvic floor is and bringing it back up through the spine. So I recommend checking those out. They're all short videos on YouTube that you can use. If you're at all interested in the spiritual side of Tantra, specifically the ancient tradition of Tantra, I highly, highly recommend the book Tantra Illuminated. It gives a very good explanation about how Tantra moved throughout the history, about what the basic principles of the spiritual tradition was, and some of the practices that you can do around Tantra. Going much more in depth into a lot of the solo practices that you can do, and a lot of the rituals. Again, these ancient traditions had a lot of rituals and practices that you were supposed to move through. And in doing so, it would help you to reach enlightenment. and Tantra is the same way. So fantastic book if you're interested on the spiritual side of this. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Tantra, learning more about kink and BDSM and sex, about building deeper relationships, then you can check out my website, brandonthedom.com. There's lots of great articles and guides there. You can also ask for some free advice. So ask a question, and then I may actually write up an article for it or create a YouTube video for it, or at the very least, send you an email response about your question. And if you really want some in-depth help with this, you can use the link below to schedule a free coaching session with me. I do 30 minutes with you, and we can dive into some of your goals around sex and relationships and figure out how to get you the sex life that you want. So thank you so much for your time and attention, and I'll see you in the next video.